Okay, so economics didn't change until 200 years ago. Even that was sort of news to me, at least the way people understood it. So nothing really changed. The society stayed more or less the same until about 1800. And the Industrial Revolution caused an interest in economics really for the first time. People just, before that, just went along and nothing changed from year to year. They didn't expect prices to go up or inflation or any of those things. So it's only 200 years old. And then all of a sudden everything changed because people realized that what they did affected what went on in the economy. It just hadn't occurred to anyone before that, it seems. So, yes, and also, yes, sorry, taking a minute to get into this. Gross national product didn't seem to change either. We'll talk about that. So, Nobel Prize in Economics, Joel Molker, Philip Agrinon, and Peter Howitt. And Peter Howitt went to McGill, which is why I pulled out my old shirt. Very proud of it. There aren't that many Canadians who have won the prize. Oops. So who won? There they are. Joel Molker, Northwestern University, Philippe Agrinon, who was French, and Peter Howitt went to Brown and McGill. We should be very proud of them because very few Nobel winners in any area are Canadian. So here they are. Peter, Philippe, and Joel. They won the prestige, and I think the big deal is prestige. Mind you, no one is going to complain about the money, but Joel got half of it because his contribution was significantly more than the other two. It's seldom that they split it like that in two. So he got a BA in economics in Hebrew. He was born in Israel, received his Master of Philosophy in Economics from Yale in '72 and a PhD from Yale in '74. Many of these people go to Yale, incidentally. So they split the rest. He got the $1.6 million and they split the rest. Sorry, they split the rest. They got $400,000 each, roughly. Oh, I'm sorry. So, French economist, chair of economics, professor at Collège de France, and professor of innovation and growth, INSEAD, professor at the London School of Economics. So, fairly good credentials. And his mother was important. We don't always include the parents, but I thought she was worth it because she coined the phrase. She was a French fashion designer. She coined the phrase pret-a-porter. So when you think about pret-a-porter, it's a Nobel Prize winner in economics mother. And there's a pret-a-porter gown. But it was really very significant, probably more significant in the society than her son's Nobel Prize, because it really changed fashion and the way people bought clothes and so on. It was the first time that fashion was available sort of on the over the counter. You didn't have to have a fashionable designer, you get a fashionable clothes at your store. Anyway, that's an aside, it has nothing to do with the prize in economics. So our laureate, and it's important because we don't always have a laureate in any area. He was born in Guelph in '46, got his BA from McGill in economics, his MA from Western. This is a Canadian boy. And then he went to Ohio State and joined Brown, where he's professor emeritus. So again, a stunning academic career. And he's had a long time connection, C.D. Howe Institute. We used to hear about C.D. Howe all the time. We don't so much now, but it's a very important think tank based in Toronto. So he certainly has Canadian credentials. And why did they win? They pioneered an explanation of innovation-driven economic growth. And it hadn't occurred to anyone before, it seems, that it was innovations in the economy and in the general society that drove the economy. And without them, without innovation, really going back to that prior to 1800, there just wasn't much innovation going on. People weren't inventing a whole lot of new stuff. So there wasn't the action that's involved when new stuff comes along. And that's really the essence of, in a word, of what they figured out. Surely we knew that before, but it hadn't actually occurred to anyone to tie changes in with economic growth. So what they called their invention or their observation was creative destruction, so that new innovation replaced older things. And we're so used to it now that it's hard for us to imagine a time when that didn't occur. You know, we've got new stuff happening all the time, and it does replace what was there before. So this is Howitt, our boy Howitt. We're going to keep coming back to that. I'm very proud of him. To understand technological product, you have to understand that it goes in waves, and that innovation produces really great benefits to humankind, which we'll see as we go along. But it also means there are constant losses in jobs for people whose technology has been bypassed by the new development. So innovation spurs growth, and this is over time, starting in 1825, when again, that's when economies really took off. So railways, steamboats, and factories in the early 1800s. Then it went on to 1900, electric motors, safer workplaces, household appliances, the power grid, the three-phase generator. Don't ask me about the three-phase generator, I know very little about it. And now, at present, the economy is driven by things like AI, robotics, research, autonomous systems, and artificial intelligence. So we progress through innovations. New ideas replace old, and that just shows what happens as it's not good news when they invented a car. It was bad news for horses and people who sold horses. That's kind of the idea that goes along there. The GLP goes up over time, but quite slowly. It really, this is Britain and Sweden, and the gross national product, that's the total value of all goods and services produced in a given country. And as you can see, it progressed, but rather slowly. And that's the way it went. This is Sweden and United Kingdom, but that's the way it's been for everyone. So it got a bit of a boost for the printing press, but not a whole lot. So propositional knowledge. Prescriptive knowledge is just you know something and carry on with it. Propositional answers questions like who did it, how did it come about, and it's in answering those questions, why, the why questions, why did this happen, that we move forward. So no one asked him why he was making it this way, but he knew why he wanted to have a bath in a tub. So, heads up for free trade. Free trade, exposes companies to new ideas. And if they're not exposed to new ideas, things don't change. So, Trump is not helping in many ways. And Aghion argues that as there are increased barriers to trade, the economy kind of dumbs itself down because it's hard to move from one product to another and move up the line. So Aghion said, I'm not welcoming the protectionist wave in the US. It's not good for world growth and innovation. In other words, free trade, wide open trade, the more that goes on with people and companies and states, the more impetus there is to improve, the better things get. And when that stops, it really slows the economy. So, woe to Canada. Well, we haven't been tremendously innovative, and we haven't been tremendously welcome. Particularly in Canada, we protect the provinces. Each province has protective barriers, and they do slow down the action between countries. And the example they have here is that, which I think makes a lot of sense to us living here in NRTL, that only after they dropped discriminating prices did they start to make really good wines, because they realized they couldn't count on just a better price. They had to make actually a better wine. So having an open market is always better, because competition between whoever it is, countries or companies, people, tend to cause growth and innovation and moving forward. So you can thank Ontario for that good glass of wine you may or may not enjoy. Howitt, our boy Howitt, said there's always a conflict in government. Clearly, you want to protect jobs if you're a politician, because if people start losing jobs, you're probably going to get voted out. And so often, when these challenges come up, governments don't go for the innovation. They go to protect the status quo so they don't have unemployment on their hands and so on, by changes in the society. So, speaking about innovation, Detroit, Windsor has been very slow to transition to EVs, electric vehicles, and China has been very quick, and China really has the market now. Most cars, not only are most electric vehicles Chinese or Asian, Vietnam and so on, but Canada's, Windsor, Detroit's been very slow off the mark, so we see them, but they haven't got the market the way China and Asian countries have. So, going back to this idea that new ideas replace old. IBM was the company, the computer company growing up. They lost business to Microsoft, which is now who has all that business that IBM properly should have had since they were earlier. Instagram certainly replaced Kodak. When was the last time you bought films for your camera? And yes, Instagram is now the way it goes. And certainly speaking about photographs, Spotify has got the market, there's no doubt. There are other companies. Spotify competes with other companies, but it's far away number one, and earned $1 billion in the second quarter. So that's not bad, $4 million a year for pictures. We have not been good at protecting artificial intelligence. Although we were there at the beginning, some Ottawa people and Toronto and somebody at Windsor, we didn't push the product so that it's significant that I thought that it was significant because AI applications can already do the job of a junior accountant and legal assistant. So are we threatened by, is employment threatened by AI? And yes, we start to hear about it, but here's a very specific example. You know, it can take over junior accountancy, and it is likely to take over more and more jobs. So that's going to be a challenge for the future. Yeah. And the way you do it is by more and more education. These are changes, they're significant changes. We're experiencing significant change with AI and with the way it's used and the changes it's going to make in the market. And it's important that our sons and daughters, or grandchildren, really get a very good education, and that education be properly supported by government and funded, because it's going to be a larger and larger factor going forward. So as things change and as change accelerates, it's important to keep the population on the cutting edge educationally. So, or not, I hope we stay where we are. So Carney is our new man, and someone I, anyway, have a lot of faith in. I think he has the background and so on and understands economies perhaps better than some prime ministers have. So they've got to encourage innovative suppliers and innovative businesses, not just any old business. It's got to be, if you're going to put money in behind a business, it should be one that's capable of making change, particularly these days. And Carney has jumped in just recently. He's announced, I think just last week, the 5 or 6 areas that he's going to be involved in. And these people, including McGill's own Hewitt, is encouraging them to create really new businesses that can take on the world, as they say. So, sustained growth of 2% doesn't sound like a whole lot. You're just growing at 2% a year. So the optimistic side of that is that's all you have to do is grow at 2% a year, because over 35 years working life, it will double. So if your income is going up at 2% a year, it'll be doubled in 35 years from now. And it's important that we sustain growth, if of course growth is what you want. We talk about that too, not everybody does, we'll get to that. And in fact, we're here now. The question is, do you really want to have growth? And it's a debate really worth having. So that's it for today, economics.